Usually when we talk about a covert operation, there's this expectation of clinical precision.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, like you get a satellite map, you identify your target, extract the data, and then the debrief points to this really clean timeline. Success or failure.
Yeah, it's very binary.
Exactly. It's binary, and it's comforting because we all like our tactical landscapes to fit neatly into a spreadsheet, but then you step into the operational reality of a Garu pack, and suddenly that satellite map is literally bleeding.
Bleeding and probably actively mutating while you look at it.
Yeah. We're looking at a tactical landscape today that is the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters. So welcome to a brand new deep dive, everyone. We are so glad you're here with us.
We have a really phenomenal mess to untangle for you today.
We really do. So for you listening, today's deep dive is entirely focused on this one specific, wildly complicated operation happening in the freezing backwoods of north-central Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and what makes this so compelling is just how rapidly the threat vector mutates on these guys.
Right. Because they went in thinking this was simple. Let's recap the big picture here. We have a pack that has successfully infiltrated this isolated company town, which is basically run by Thomas Lynch in his corporate fracking operations.
Classic corporate overreach setup.
Totally. And they managed to plant a corrupted USB drive into the local corporate network. They thought they were running the standard, low-temperature reconnaissance mission, just gather some data on the environmental devastation and get out.
But they kicked a hornet's nest.
A massive hornet's nest. And the hornets, in this case, are weaponized transdimensional entities.
Which is a slight escalation from corporate security guards.
Just a slight one, yeah. So I want to get right into the anatomy of this pack's dawn encampment. Because before we can analyze how they handle this dual-layered technological and spiritual threat, we really have to look at their tactical footprint.
You have to look at how they sleep.
Exactly. The way they sleep in this freezing Pennsylvania snow tells you literally everything you need to know about their operational cohesion. Or, honestly, their complete lack thereof.
I love this scene so much. Their camp is this brilliant, almost absurd manifestation of all these contradictory survival strategies just colliding in the wilderness.
It's glamping meets hardcore survivalism.
Yes. Because when you have a pack this tribalistically diverse, you do not get a uniform military perimeter. They aren't pitching identical olive drab tents.
Not at all. I mean, let's start with Edwin. He's operating with this typical glasswalker audacity.
He really is. He has essentially brought city infrastructure into the forest.
Right. He's using a U-Haul as a windbreak for this high-end Walmart ex-Patagonia Gore-Tex tent. He's wrapped in a thermal bag. And the kicker, he has a Starlink satellite dish positioned maximally on the U-Haul's roof.
Which is just incredible.
I have to challenge the tactical viability of that, though. I mean, a Starlink dish on a U-Haul in the middle of a covert op, isn't that just the giant screaming beacon to anyone running basic signals intelligence in the area?
Well, yeah, it absolutely is a physical beacon. But you have to understand, Edwin is playing a totally different game. He is trusting his own digital countermeasures to obfuscate that physical signal. It's this very calculated arrogance that glasswalkers are known for. He feels he needs that maximum human connectivity to maintain his oversight of the network they just infected.
He'd rather be visible to satellites than disconnected from the web.
Exactly. And then you contrast that heavy reliance on the Weaver's tools with Artie.
Right. Artie's the Hamid, the human-born werewolf.
Yeah, and Artie bypasses the tent entirely. He's sleeping inside a blackout Cadillac Escalade in his sleeping bag.
Which I kind of get.
Oh, it's super comfortable. He wants the heavy, climate-controlled comfort of human machinery, but without Edwin's blatant data emissions. He just wants the physical shell.
And then you move away from the tech guys, and you have the Lupus members, the Wolfborn. Matson Papelawani, who is the pack's spiritual guide, he doesn't use the Escalade as a shelter. He sleeps directly underneath the car.
Under the engine block.
Yes. Because he's using the machine merely as a radiant heat rock. He's just absorbing the thermal bleed from the V8 engine after the day's drive. It's such a visceral, alien repurposing of human technology.
It really highlights the fundamental difference in how they perceive the Weaver's constructs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, to Matson Papelawani, a complex combustion engine isn't a marvel of engineering. It's just a warm stone in a cave.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's Eagle.
Oh, man, Eagle. Typical get a Fenris endurance display.
Exactly. He rejects the tent, he rejects the Escalade, the U-Haul, all of it. He was sleeping outside, raw to the freezing elements, right next to the dead campfire.
Because to him, relying on Gore-Tex or climate control is basically a spiritual feeling, right?
Yeah, it's weakness. And we also have Chen Sheng-Sing, the stargazer, who is meditating in his sleep by looking up through the SUV's moonroof.
And Havel, the Silmer Fang, who is fully buried in the snow like a husky with literally just his nose sticking out.
Just his nose. It's so good.
But okay, let's unpack this for you listening. When I look at this setup, a guy running AWS diagnostics 10 feet away from a guy buried in a snowdrift, my first thought is that this level of fragmentation has to be a massive liability.
It definitely looks like
Right.
one.
Like, how does a military or covert unit function when they don't even share a baseline definition of what shelter is?
Oh, here's the secret. It looks like a liability, but it's actually their core survival strategy.
Really?
Yeah, it is compartmentalized expertise taken to the absolute extreme. They aren't trying to force uniformity onto a fundamentally fractured nature.
Okay, that makes sense.
Think about it. If they forced Egil into the Escalade, his rage would just spike from the confinement. He'd probably tear the doors off.
Oh, for sure.
And if they forced Edwin into the snowdrift to be tough,
Hmm.
he'd be hypothermic and completely useless on the terminal the next morning.
Yeah.
So they don't do that. They let the Glasswalker manage the data,
Yeah.
and they let the Get of Fenris
Fair.
manage the physical perimeter.
So their strength in this multi-front war relies on letting each tool operate exactly as it was designed to.
Precisely. You don't use a hammer to turn a screw.
But that heavy reliance on Weaver tech, specifically Edwin's setup, is exactly what compromises them at dawn.
Yep.
Because Edwin's absolute need for that Starlink connection triggers a massive, terrifying escalation.
It is a sequence that perfectly illustrates the bleeding edge between the physical world and the spirit world, the Umbra.
Right, so let's set the scene for you guys. Edwin is zipped up in his sleeping bag, and he wakes up feeling this tickling sensation on his face.
Which is your first warning sign.
Exactly. In the freezing Pennsylvania woods, in the dead of winter, insects should not be active.
No.
So he opens his eyes, and he finds himself covered in hundreds of tiny, translucent spiders. They're swarming out of his coffee cup, they're crawling over his boots, and they're moving in these fluid, totally unnatural ways.
They're moving like data.
Yes. So, wait, these Weaver spirits are physically manifesting in the meat space, like inside a closed Gore-Tex tent.
They are. They're bridging the gauntlet,
Yeah.
which is the barrier between the physical world and the Umbra. But here is the critical detail that Edwin notices. These glowing spiders are spinning ethereal threads.
Uh-huh.
And those threads are forming a direct, luminescent line from Edwin's pocket, where his smartphone is, straight upward, piercing the fabric of the tent and leading directly to that Starlink dish on the U-Haul.
Okay, let's pause and look at the mechanics of this, especially for listeners who might be new to this lore. We know Weaver spirits govern order, structure, technology, things like that.
Right.
But how exactly does a hostile operative weaponize a spirit across a digital network? I mean, we usually think of spirits as being bound to tribal fetishes or physical locations like cairns, not routing through IP addresses.
And this is where the world building of this universe just shines. You have to understand that the Weaver isn't just physical cities or skyscrapers. It's the architecture of logic itself.
Ah,
So that corrupted USB virus they planted the day before, it wasn't just a piece of human malware, it was a spiritually charged payload. Yeah. Whoever picked it up inside Thomas Lynch's corporate structure didn't just run a standard Norton antivirus scan. They unleashed a spiritual counteroffensive using digital Weaver spirits as literal bloodhounds.
And Edwin, because he's a glasswalker, he immediately recognizes what's happening. He can essentially read the spiritual telemetry of the network.
Exactly. He sees the matrix, so to speak.
So he traces the signal back, and he sees these spiders are bouncing off a server in the Philippines, routing through an Amazon Web Services Docker container just to obfuscate their origin point.
And this is where the panic sets in. Because Edwin realizes the true source, the actual hunter controlling these spirits, is beaconing off a signal from New York City.
Someone highly capable in New York is aggressively pinging their exact physical coordinates in the freezing woods of Pennsylvania.
They are actively being painted by a laser designator, spiritually speaking.
So Edwin's response is just incredibly ruthless. He knows just unplugging the Starlink isn't enough, right?
Right, because the spiritual thread has already latched onto his hardware's physical location. Unplugging it just leaves the thread dangling there.
Right. So he sets up this digital honeypot to momentarily confuse the hunter in New York, and then he completely burns down his own network infrastructure.
He figuratively detonates a server.
Yeah, he overloads a server in a random internet cafe in Southeast Asia just to completely sever the digital thread connecting him to the East Coast.
Which means Some kid playing Doom in an internet cafe in the Philippines just had his server melt into slag.
I know, the collateral damage. But tactically, if Edwin burns his own nodes, he's totally blind now, right? He's isolated his pack to protect them, but he's also cut off his own oversight of the mission.
It's a necessary amputation. You cut off the arm to stop the infection. And you're right, it forces a severe, immediate tactical shift.
Up until dawn, the pack believed they had the luxury of time. They had the element of surprise. They were just passively casing the fracking operation.
Yeah, they were taking their time.
But this counterhack means they have been made. The timeline is completely accelerated now. Whoever is in New York knows hostile actors are in the woods near the Lynch facility, and they are definitely closing in.
So they decide they have to strike their primary physical target, the nearby corporate logging camp, immediately. Today. In broad daylight if they have to. They cannot wait for optimal conditions anymore.
But what fascinates me is how they handle the dual nature of this threat. They know they're facing corporate security guards in the physical world, obviously, but this Weaver attack proves the spiritual landscape is equally, if not more, hostile.
It's a two-front war now.
So they decide to split their forces, right?
Yes, and it is a massive logistical tightrope. So Edwin stays in the truck. He launches a fixed-wing drone to fly high above the tree line and run physical recon on the logging camp and meat space.
While Edwin is doing that, Matsun Papelani is tasked with leading a team into the Umbra. They need to investigate this massive, localized spiritual disturbance that's emanating from the south, near the camp.
Right, and Matsun Papelani is bringing Artie and Havel with him.
Which, okay, stepping sideways into the spirit world is tough enough on its own. But what is the gnosis expenditure, the spiritual deadweight cost of dragging a Hamid who loves Cadillacs and a silver fang through the gauntlet?
Oh, it requires immense spiritual heavy lifting. Matsun Papelani isn't just popping over. He uses a polished, flat disc of native silver as a reflective surface to bridge the duality.
Like a mirror.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He has to anchor the crossing physically and spiritually. He is spending significant gnosis spiritual energy to pull pack mates who aren't naturally attuned to that specific umbral frequency through the barrier.
Because if he fails, they don't just bounce back.
No, if he fails, they risk getting permanently caught in the pattern web of the gauntlet itself. It's incredibly dangerous.
But he succeeds. He pulls them through, and they drop into an umbral landscape that is profoundly bifurcated, like it's split right down the middle.
It really is. It's a stark visual contrast.
To the north, the Umbra reflects the untamed wild. Vibrant colors, striking shadows. It's the spiritual memory of the pristine forest. But to the south, toward that corporate logging camp.
It is the truth of the Earth's decay. The narrative describes this putrid, rotting stench hitting them instantly. The elementals of the water and the air are visibly corrupted. They're mutated by the industrial runoff. The firmament of the earth itself feels like it's seeping malice.
And amidst this really heavy toxic atmosphere, there's this brilliant ecosystem reactivity that happens. The minor spirits are just acting on their nature.
I love these little details.
Right, like a free-roaming mud spirit literally tries to consume Artie's shoes just because he's wearing human clothes in a wild space.
The Umbra has a strict dress code.
It really does. And Matsun Papelani is hounded by a flock of angry rabbit spirits because he's eaten way too many of them in the physical world.
They hold a grudge.
It's so funny, but it shows you, if you're listening and trying to picture this, that the Umbra isn't just a static painted background for a boss fight. It's a living, highly reactive logic system.
It remembers everything you do. But, those minor annoyances fade pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah, because they hear a ground-shaking, mournful cry coming from the west.
It draws the Umbral team deep into the spiritual mountains, and it leads them to this pitch-black cave.
And inside they find She Who Sleeps in Winter, a gigantic matriarch bear spirit, basically a high-ranking conceptual embodiment of hibernation itself.
And she is awake, she is groaning, she is in obvious, immense agony.
Okay, I have to push back on their decision-making here, though.
Oh.
I mean, think about the timeline. They are on a severely accelerated operational clock because a high-tier Weaver operative in New York is actively hunting them.
Sure.
They have maybe hours before a physical strike team hits their coordinates, and they decide to stop and practice spiritual diplomacy with a bear in a cave. How is that not a massive tactical blunder?
I hear you. From a purely military standpoint, it sounds crazy. But you have to remember that in Garu warfare, the spiritual ecosystem dictates the physical reality.
Okay.
If a spirit of this magnitude is corrupted or in pain, it will manifest as an absolute, insurmountable obstacle in the physical world. They cannot succeed at the logging camp if the bedrock itself is hostile to them.
Ah, so fixing the spirit is fixing the battlefield.
Exactly. And Artie, utilizing his Hamid understanding of etiquette, acts as the diplomat here.
Right, because he understands social cues, even weird spirit ones.
Yeah. He knows spirits respond to actions that honor their core nature. You don't bow to the spirit of hibernation, you lie down.
I love that.
Artie assumes a nap-like posture on the freezing floor of the cave just to show deference.
So the Great Bear tells them her back aches, her head aches, and she cannot sleep, no matter what she does. So the pack uses a ritual connection to physically empathize with her pain. They essentially link nervous systems.
And the causality of what they experience is just stunning.
It is brilliant writing. When they connect, they don't feel phantom claw marks. They don't feel physical trauma or bleeding. They experience the sensation of drinking 8 shots of espresso back to back.
Their mouths go completely dry. Their vision swims. Their hearts start pounding out of their chests.
It is the spiritual equivalent of a massive, heart-stopping caffeine overdose.
And the mechanism behind this is the key to the entire operation. It answers the why of the whole deep dive.
So why is the spirit of hibernation over-caffeinated?
It's the industrial hyperarousal of the physical world.
Right.
Thomas Lynch's fracking operations aren't just felling trees, that's the surface level.
Yeah.
They're violently driving heavy, rhythmic machinery deep into the bedrock.
Or cracking the earth open.
Exactly. The constant mechanical vibrations, the high-pressure injection of chemical fluids into the shale, this acts as a literal physical stimulant to the earth.
So the heavy industry is keeping the natural world in a state of traumatized wakefulness. The shale is the caffeine, and the corporate drills are just forcing it into the Earth's bloodstream. The bear is suffering from industrial insomnia.
Precisely. She cannot shut down because the earth is vibrating. She asks them to tear the metal out of the earth.
And in exchange for their vow to stop the drilling, she offers them a reward. She literally rakes her massive claws into the stone floor, creating these sleeping trenches. And she invites them to hibernate with her for a moment.
Which is a huge honor.
It is. They accept, and upon waking back at the edge of the gauntlet, ready to cross back to the physical world, they discover they've been granted the Mother's Touch healing gift, plus the physical ability to hibernate and permanently increased physical strength.
It's an incredible power-up. But, as always in this universe, there is a massive political complication attached to this reward.
Of course there is.
They wake up wearing these ethereal woven pendants carved with a bear. They gain a huge tactical advantage for the fight ahead, but they have to hide it from the rest of the Giru nation.
Right, because of the lore. For you listening, why is allying with a bear a bad thing?
The fallout from the ancient War of Rage still completely dictates their modern politics. Associating with the Gural, the bear shifters and their spirits, is a massive ancient taboo.
Because the werewolves basically tried to wipe them out.
Yeah, so if traditionalist Guru see those pendants, this pack will lose honor, standing, and potentially face violent retribution. They have to keep their salvation a complete secret.
It just layers a phenomenal amount of internal political tension over an already incredibly volatile external mission.
It never stops.
It really doesn't. And this brings us to the physical symptom of this spiritual disease. The Umbral team returns to the meat space, and they have to seamlessly pivot from soothing the Earth's insomnia to violently dismantling the logging camp.
They have to shift gears instantly.
Right, so Edwin has been running his drone recon in the physical world while they were gone. He maps out a skeleton crew of guards and roughly 30 workers on site, but he spots an anomaly.
A very suspicious anomaly.
Attached to the main lumber mill is this office building with heavily tinted windows.
Custom car-level tinting. On a backwoods logging office.
It makes no sense.
No, it's a glaring architectural discrepancy. It screams that they are hiding something unnatural from their own mundane workforce.
So night falls, and it's time to infiltrate. But before they move in, Chen Xing does something remarkable. He realizes the physical odds are poor. 30 to 1 is bad math. So he reaches into his spiritual heritage and contacts an ancestor for tactical advice.
The Stargazers are so good at this kind of lateral thinking.
Yeah. The ancestor recounts a story about destroying a massive dam on the Guangzhou River centuries ago. An open attack would have drawn the local human armies, which would have resulted in a complete slaughter of the Garou.
So what do?
They entreated the spirit of a typhoon, they summoned a massive natural disaster, and they hid their physical sabotage inside the chaos of the flooding and the lightning.
Hide your targeted violence inside a natural disaster. It's a profound strategic doctrine. And it fundamentally shapes their exit strategy for this entire raid.
Right. So they approach the facility, and we immediately get this incredibly tense, yet kind of hilarious argument over communications.
Typical pack dynamics.
Totally. Edwin wants to run an earpiece operation from the truck to guide Eagle through the blind spots. Take a left, guard on your right, that kind of thing. And Eagle completely refuses.
He wants nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
And he has a perfectly valid physiological reason for refusing.
Really?
Yeah, think about it. In his lupus form, his full wolf form, his senses are wildly hyper-heightened. A tiny, cheap earpiece crackling with Edwin's voice over a radio frequency doesn't sound like a whisper to him.
What does it sound like?
It sounds like a bullhorn detonating inside his ear canal. It entirely destroys his situational awareness and his ability to hear the actual guards.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think about that. That forces a huge debate over which forms to use for the infiltration, doesn't it?
It does. They have to constantly weigh the risk versus reward of stealth.
Right, because my first thought is, why don't they just use their Hamid forms? Sneak in as humans. If a guard catches a human walking around a lumberyard, it's just a trespassing charge. They get yelled at, maybe arrested.
Sure, but a trespassing charge still halts the operation and draws the local police.
True.
Plus, sneaking around as a human is clumsy. You lack the padded paws, you lack the olfactory mapping of the environment, you can't smell where the guards are, and you don't have night vision.
You're just a blind guy in the dark.
Exactly. The lupus form grants absolute stealth superiority. You are the perfect nighttime predator. But the liability is catastrophic if you fail.
Because if a guard sees a massive timber wolf inside an office building...
The reaction isn't a radio call for trespassing. It's unadulterated, primal panic, and immediate, frantic gunfire.
They decide the stealth advantage is worth the risk. They have to get to that tinted room. And this leads to what is honestly an incredibly cinematic infiltration sequence.
It's so good.
Chen and Eagle move in. But Chen's lupus form reflects his specific heritage. He doesn't look like a standard North American gray wolf. He manifests as this massive, blocky-headed Tibetan fox wolf hybrid.
Which is such a strange, striking visual.
And he's smoking a cigarette.
Yes, it's the mundane colliding with the supernatural in the best way.
They are creeping past the heavy machinery, staying in the shadows, and suddenly a guard rounds the corner. The guard has headphones in, totally relaxed, probably listening to a podcast or something.
Probably this deep dive.
Yeah. And suddenly he is standing face to face with a giant smoking Tibetan fox.
Just a completely surreal moment.
I want to look at the mechanics of this encounter, specifically the concept of the delirium. For you listening, the delirium is the supernatural terror that humans feel when they see a werewolf. Why didn't this guard instantly shatter into a panic attack and start screaming?
That's a great question. Because of the specific form Chen is in. As you said, the delirium is the genetic terror hard-coded into humanity from the prehistoric days when Garo actively culled them. But it is triggered maximally by the Krynos war form, the 9-foot-tall, half-man, half-wolf monstrosity that braced the human mind. A giant Tibetan fox, however, triggers sheer cognitive dissonance.
The guard's brain literally stalls out, trying to parse the absurdity of a smoking fox against his mundane reality.
He doesn't experience the delirium. He experiences a system error. His brain just says, does not compute.
And that half second of mental buffering is all Eagle needs.
Yep.
Eagle is creeping right behind the guard, still in his lupus form. He doesn't even bother to shift into a larger form. He launches into a leap, his jaws lock directly onto the guard's throat, and the threat is neutralized instantly.
It is a brutally efficient, hyper-violent takedown that paints the room in gore. It happens in the blink of an eye.
It is a really stark reminder that beneath all the spiritual diplomacy with the bear and the technological hacking with Edwin, they are apex predators.
They are monsters.
They really are. But the dead guard is merely an obstacle. The true objective is locked behind the heavy, lime green, padlock-secured door of that tinted office.
They finally made it to the center of the maze.
They reach the door, and Eagle, his adrenaline completely spiking from the kill, tries to shift into his Krynos form to just smash the door open. But the shift fumbles.
Which is such a great mechanical detail to include in the narrative.
Right. Why does that happen?
Because the rage mechanic in Gru physiology is their greatest weapon in a brawl. But in a stealth operation, it is the ultimate liability. Eagle is so wound up, his internal rage pool is spiking so aggressively from the taste of blood that the physical transformation actually stalls.
He is teetering on the edge of a berserker frenzy.
Exactly. He has to expend all of his mental willpower just to pull himself back, just to keep from losing his mind and destroying the entire building and compromising the mission in a blind rage.
Which leaves Chen, the calm, meditative stargazer, to smoothly step up, execute a flawless shift into his own 9-foot Krenos form, and just rip the heavy green door clean off its hinges.
Just effortlessly.
Yeah, and what they find inside that dark, cramped space is deeply unsettling. It's not corporate documents. It's not servers. It's rows and rows of tiny metal cages.
They found the source of the umbral stench from earlier. They found the laboratory of the worm.
Okay, let's talk about the specific corruption in this room. We know the womb represents cosmic decay and toxic destruction, but this isn't just a corporate entity dumping sludge into a river to save a few bucks.
No, this is much worse. This is weaponized, targeted spiritual mutation.
Exactly. They turn on the lights and they find normal forest animals, squirrels, skunks in the front cages. But toward the back, the animals have been subjected to, like, spiritual radiation.
They are completely warped.
The text describes them as having skeletal, snake-like anatomies. Their heads are too small for their bodies. They have needle-like teeth. There is a rabbit the size of a fox, and it's drooling a glowing yellow bile that is literally melting through the steel of its cage and pooling on the dirt floor.
They aren't animals anymore. They are banes.
Right. The logging company is running a literal incubation chamber. They're forcibly mutating the local wildlife into banes to spread the worm's influence deeper into the physical ecosystem.
That is exactly what was traumatizing the bear spirit. It wasn't just the drills. It was this localized cancer spreading into the soil.
And maybe the most tragic part, hanging on the windowsill is a tiny birdcage holding a literal fairy.
A fey creature.
Yeah, a fey creature with a broken longbow. It just shows the sheer breadth of the collateral damage this corporate machine is inflicting on the entire supernatural world.
The PAC's response to this is absolute. There is no tactical debate here. There's no checking in with Edwin.
No. Eagle and Chen, both in their massive Kranos forms now, unleash sheer righteous violence on the cages. And this is where their physiology matters immensely.
Their claws aren't just physical weapons.
Right, they deal aggravated damage.
Explain what that means for the listener.
Aggravated damage means it cuts on a spiritual level, not just physical. They slice right through the spiritual defenses of the corrupted Banes. They are destroying the tainted spiritual essence alongside the physical flesh.
They are purifying the room through violence.
They slaughter the monstrosities, but then Edwin radios in. The dead guard's walkie-talkie has triggered an automated dead man's switch.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and sirens are starting to echo through the valley. Rapid response corporate security teams are converging on the mill from all directions.
This is where Chen's earlier preparation pays off. This is where he implements the ancestors' advice about the typhoon.
Yes, because you cannot scrub werewolf blood off a dirt floor. You cannot explain thick steel cages ripped open by 9-foot claws.
His masquerade would be completely broken.
So Chen gathers up the dry lumber inside the office, strikes a spark, and ignites a massive roaring fire.
He hides the supernatural evidence inside an industrial accident.
It's brilliant. When the human fire department and the corporate security arrive, they won't find the aftermath of a guru strike team. They'll just find a devastating, very mundane electrical fire that got out of hand.
Perfect cover.
Eagle shifts back to his lupus form, gently grabs the birdcage, holding the fairy in his jaws, and they sprint out into the freezing woods. The snow is glowing red from the blaze behind them. They extract flawlessly.
It is a breathtaking execution of dual-domain warfare.
It really is.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean when we look at the entire operation? You have a team that successfully navigated these incredibly muddy waters by operating on two entirely different fronts simultaneously.
They balanced it perfectly.
Right. In the Umbra, they used empathy and ritual deference to soothe the traumatized spirit of the earth. And then in the physical world, they used targeted extreme violence to dismantle a toxic corporate laboratory.
They addressed the spiritual disease and the physical symptom in perfect tandem, which proves that physical action without spiritual awareness just creates more trauma. And spiritual awareness without physical action just leaves the machinery running. You have to have both.
But this raises an important lingering question for you, the listener, to ponder as we wrap up. Because if we connect this narrative to the reality of our own modern industries.
Oh, this is the thought that keeps you up at night, isn't it?
It really is. If our real world has an invisible layer of emotional and spiritual resonance absorbing our actions, what kind of monstrous entities are our massive data centers breeding right now?
Wow, yeah.
What is the spiritual runoff of a deep sea drilling rig or our relentless 247 digital noise? Our way right now keeping the earth perpetually hypercaffeinated and unable to ever truly rest.